Let's make changes in your environment and your family culture so that healthier choices are just easily accessible and fun. Throwing the F word in there as well. Like, what a concept. And so that was really the kind of modus operandi behind this book. And that sent me on a trajectory of studying, like, is there any impact? And both of us have been talking about this for quite some time, and I've learned so much from you over the years. And by the way, just shout out everybody listening. Doesn't Dr. Gundry have the most wholesome voice ever? It's so wholesome. But, a lot of research has come out about longevity and the factors that really go into that. And I shared in the new book a huge meta-analysis conducted by researchers at Brigham Young University. And they looked at 148 studies. About 300,000 people were involved in this study. It's a huge data set. And they found that people who have healthy social connections have about a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality. That means about a 50% reduction in death from pretty much everything when you have healthy social ties. And to take it further, my biggest insight and really what I'm providing in this book is it's not just our social ties, but where do we connect most often? What is the thread that goes through all of our interactions? And it's food. So much of our relationships are revolving around food, whether it's a first date, whether it's a date night, whether it's, after school. I was just talking about my youngest son playing basketball after school or after the game, any kind of family event, holidays. So much of our lives revolve around food. And my question was, has recently the family dinner, which has been a part of our society for centuries, but even deeper, thousands of years going back when we were existing as tribes. And I just recently took my family to Hawaii and we had this, it's a dramatization when you see a luau, but it just stuck even more. There was this tribal connection. We're all working together to hunt, gather, prepare the food, eat together, celebrate. That was built in. And over time, we've become more and more isolated. And I came across some research from some colleagues at Harvard, and they found that only about 30% of families now eat together on a regular basis. So this is something that's kind of on the endangered species list. And so one of the things I want to share today is some of the latest research on how eating together. So yes, our relationships are absolutely critical, but how eating together affects our health outcomes.
You're right. The family breakfast or the family dinner seems to be a dinosaur. What contributed to that demise? Then maybe we don't need to do that because I think everybody knows that this demise has happened. So how do we get that back? Number one, why do we want to get that back?
Yeah.
And then we'll segue into how do we get that back, which is your cookbook.
Perfect. So I'm going to share a couple of studies really quickly. So one of them, those same researchers at Harvard, they took a look at family eating behaviors and health outcomes, food choices, that kind of thing. It was a multi-year data set. And they found that families who eat together on a regular basis consume significantly higher amounts of vital nutrients that help to prevent chronic diseases and significantly less ultra-processed foods. Couple that with, I'm going to combine two studies. One was published in Pediatrics and one was published in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association. And they found that families that eat together just 3 times a week, this was that minimum effective dose. Those children in those families had significantly lowered incidence of developing obesity and eating disorders. All right, so those were from those 2 separate studies. And now all of this was sounding really good. And I was just like, why doesn't everybody know this? And we're going to talk about why this is happening. But for me, I come from a low income community. And within that, we're just really inundated with ultra processed food at every turn. And it's cheap, it's accessible. That's all I really knew existed. And when I was in college, as a matter of fact, I was living in Ferguson, Missouri, and every fast food that you can name, literally, you could just rattle off any of them, was in about a 2-mile radius of my apartment. And as soon as I go out my apartment, there's a liquor store, shelves filled with ultra processed food. There wasn't a organic section of my store. There was no gyms. I didn't know what yoga was. Like, none of this stuff existed in my environment. And so I was like, how can that apply to people who don't necessarily have access to healthier food or are not aware of their ability to have access? And I came across a study that I was just like, I have to write this book when I found this study. And this was looking at minority children who are generally in the context of a low income environment, kids like me. And what they found, what the researchers uncovered, was that children who ate together with their family, any meal, 4 times a week, consumed significantly higher amounts of fruits and vegetables. Their data found that kids who ate with their family those 4 times a week ate 5 servings of fruits and vegetables 5 days a week at least, and significantly lower amounts of chips, soda, and other processed foods. And they noticed specifically when the TV was never or rarely on during family meals. There's something about that technology kind of getting in the way. So this really, for me, if my family would have known that just the act of eating together would have created more of a protective barrier around our health, because every person in my nuclear family, my close family, and also extended family had at least one chronic disease. And we're not unique. The CDC's numbers just last year, 2022, stated that 60% of American adults now have at least one chronic disease, as you know. 40% have 2 or more. And so we were on that higher end. And so with that being said, now let's talk about why.
Yeah.
Why is this having this impact? Why does it improve our health outcomes? I'm just going to do a very logical one, which is if we know, for example, and by the way, we'll just go with that minimum effective dose of 3 meals a week, which is what I'm going to encourage everybody to do moving forward after this episode. We'll just say, and it's got to be based on you and your lifestyle and what's practical for you. So for my family, this can be Monday, Wednesday, family dinner, brunch on Sundays. By the way, you got to schedule this. We all have a lot of stuff going on. We schedule things that are far less important than our families. Put it on this calendar. We have something called instinctive elaboration. Your brain is always asking questions on, especially if it knows, like, we have family dinner on Monday, what are we eating, right? So it's inciting this practicality and planning. But more so, what we're doing when we're in proximity with people that we love, as you know this, we have an alteration in our chemistry. We start producing more things like oxytocin. And oxytocin, by the way, has been found to kind of counteract the activity of cortisol, this glorified stress hormone. It's not that cortisol is bad, by the way, but it's just like we can really get into that dominant place. And so what we see in the data is there's a switching happening, moving from that sympathetic fight or flight nervous system that just tends to just be on all the time now, to the parasympathetic rest and digest is the nickname nervous system when you're around people that you love, especially under the guise of eating good food together. Also, we've got to give ourselves some grace, because just a couple of weeks ago, actually, my wife was planning on cooking dinner and she ended up, we live in LA now, so traffic can be just, it can be a surprise.
Yes.
And so she got caught on the other side of town and she wasn't going to make it back in time to cook. And so me and my sons were at the house and it's just like, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and DoorDash, but we're still going to eat together. We still sat down, ate together as a family, had a good time, had some laughs, and also got that connectivity, which is, and here's another aspect of why this matters. The dinner table, whatever meal it is, it really functions as a unifier. And you get to see, especially again, if you've got technology put to the side, and I talk about a bunch of strategies for that in the book, you get to see your child. And a lot of times everybody's kind of living their respective lives and they never really cross over and pay full attention, because there's going to be subtleties that you're going to pick up, right? Certain physical traits, right? Because a lot of our expression is through body language, right? And you're going to be able to pick up, and also the power of asking questions as well, and creating a new kind of cultural trend. For thousands of years, prayer has been a part of mealtime. And part of that is the taking a moment to really decompress, to be in the present, to slow down. And so whether it's a prayer, whether it's a gratitude practice, so every meal when we eat together, we all go around and share 3 things that we're grateful for from that day. And so it just starts to exercise that muscle of self-expression. Also, our minds are, really operating with a filter, right? What are you filtering? That's what you're going to notice. And so if we know we're going to share what we're grateful for that day, we're looking for things to be grateful for, right? And so last piece here, and I could share 10 more reasons why this is effective. But one of the other interesting studies that I shared in the book was just the process of slowing down and being more present with your food while in the context of, rather than mindlessly eating in front of, whatever, YouTube, which is so cool. I do that sometimes. But slowing down and actually the process of actually chewing your food, being present and chewing your food, enacts that parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. It reduces stress. So I shared a couple of really cool studies on how eating together and how we're eating reduces overall stress. And stress is a big component of many of our major killers.
I've met your wife and kids. How old are the kids now?
So my two sons that are at the house, my oldest son just turned 23. He's in his last semester of college. My youngest son, he just turned 12.
Yeah. All right. So he's about to be a teenager. He already thinks he is. How do you put this into play in someone who that phone really needs to be in his hand, and he's glaring at you because his best friend has posted something and he's out of the loop, and you want to thank God for dinner? Help us work, because everybody watching wants to know how you pull it off.
Yeah, because of course, first of all, we've got to admit that we have a problem. We're addicted to our devices.
True.
All right. And so, we've got all these channels, the dopamine connection, just this kind of very strong desire to open that phone up. And even if we're hanging out with other people, just to check on our phone, even if I shared some data in the book too, just being in eyesight pulls away your attention. Whether or not your phone is, off, blinking or whatever, but just the fact that it's around you, because your brain knows all the goodies that are in there, And so knowing that, if our kids, if they're into gaming or, social media or whatever the case might be, to suddenly come in and say, we're having family dinners now. This scientist on the show said this is good for you.
You're going to do this.
Yeah. That's not the way to go about it. And by the way, when people are coming in to see me each day, a lot of times, a lot of the reasons or justifications people would give for not being able to accomplish their behavioral change goals and get the results they want, a lot of times, people will be like, well, I really want to do this, but my husband, I really want to do this. It's just my kids. It's just my mother, you just don't understand. She just makes it, and they will point to people that they love being the biggest obstacle in them getting where they want to be. Mm-hmm. And part of our suffering and disconnection is that, to be honest with you, we just want people to act the way that we want them to act. We just want them to fall in line. Don't kill my vibe. I know what's best for you. Just do what I want you to do. And inevitably, whether it's your significant other, your kids, your parents, they're gonna do stuff that you don't like or don't necessarily agree with. And our suffering is because we expect them to just do what we want, instead of realizing this huge, really insight. We know our family better than anybody. We know what motivates them. We know what de-excites them. We know what depresses them. We know what makes them happy. It's just a lot of times we don't want to deal with it because a lot of times our energy is strained and we just want them to act right. And so as we build our own energy, again, that microculture, starting with ourselves, and our energy tank is filled up a little bit more, we have a little bit more patience and we can pay attention to those cues. And so I'm thinking right now about, some people are just going to be contrarians, all right? And every family pretty much has one.
Usually one.
But there's going to be an extreme too. I don't know, have you seen this show Yellowstone?
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem like a Yellowstone guy. All right, now.
I'm more of a Succession guy.
Okay. It's just the voice. It's the voice, Dr. Gundry. And so in Yellowstone, Beth, all right, the character Beth, she's a problem at dinner. She hasn't finished one family dinner ever. All right, she's always going to be a problem. But the other family members know that and they expect it, right? And so they already know what they're going to do. And so knowing the character, and by the way, we're not necessarily going to have somebody that's a total problem, but just knowing what excites and brings your family members together collectively. And so just to give an example with my two sons. So my older son is very people oriented and family oriented. He loves his family. And so hanging out is not a big deal. However, that phone can be a distraction. And so we both, but I can't have him do something I'm not doing. So we both made it a pact to not bring our phone to the table, period. This kid, for years, he would actually keep his phone downstairs in his bedroom a lot of the times, even when he came upstairs in general to see us or talk to us or hang out. Huh? He just kind of got into that habit. And my younger son, now he's even more inundated with technology. This isn't necessarily everybody's, but my kids are the last to get the phones usually in the class. My oldest son was, and my youngest son doesn't have a phone yet. Ooh. But he does have his iPad. His friends, they text and things like that. But I know that he enjoys his little shows. He enjoys gaming with his friends. And so for me to say, I need you to get off of that to come have dinner with us, this is the bridge. It's with any addiction, really. We can't just remove the behavior. We have to replace it with something of equal or greater value. And so I employ ethical, psychological strategies to make them excited about having dinner together. And so this could be something as simple as asking my son, like, okay, so we're having family dinner tonight. What do you want to have for dessert? Right? Do you want cherry frozen yogurt pops, or do you want an acai bowl or whatever, you know? I know he likes desserts. He's like his mother, you know, he likes sweets after every dinner. He's like, I'm in the mood for some sweet. Or it could be, you know, my family also, we have this kind of culture of creativity. This could be something as simple as like, we know that we're going to have like a fun game night, or there's going to be something entertaining that's a part of this meal as well, you know? And so there's going to be some kind of an allure of fun and just knowing what they're into. And I invite that into the family dinner time.
So you could bribe your kids with food to get them to the dinner table?
In a way, in an ethical way. It's tricky to use food as a reward, per se.
Right.
But if this is something that you're
a particular
already...
flavor that they're interested in.
Right, that part, yeah.
That part.
Yeah, so just even like if we're making a smoothie together, just like, do you want strawberries or... And I don't ask, do you want the smoothie?
Right.
I say, okay, so I'm making a smoothie. Do you want strawberries or a blueberry smoothie? Right? But just giving options, psychologically, we like options. We don't like being told what to do, for the most part. But giving options, suddenly we feel a sense of freedom and freedom of choice.
If you found this video helpful, I think you're going to love this one. Do not let this fear-mongering dissuade you from the benefits that you will derive by eating dark chocolate.